poll this morning was, do you agree with the rejection of the bail amendment bill, extension of duration, I think it is in brackets 2022 in the Senate? We had 24 people voting on the poll this morning. Of the 24, 16 of you said no, you do not agree with the rejection of the bill. 8 of you said yes, you do agree with the rejection of the bill. Of course, you can continue to vote on this poll throughout the day, through all programming, and we'll give you the final results tomorrow morning, which will be Friday. So we'll give you those results tomorrow morning. So you can continue to vote throughout the day on this poll. So good morning, Martin George, and welcome to the Power Breakfast Show.
Yeah, hi, morning to you, Paul, morning, Richard, morning, Steve.
Morning, Martin. How are you?
Great.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, I suppose we could jump straight into it with regard to the bail amendment bill. I mean, of course, it would have had its sunset clause. The sunset clause has come to an end, and they were seeking an extension of 1 year. The state was seeking an extension of 1 year. The opposition raised objections, and obviously they got the support of, several independent senators also felt the need not to back the bill this time around. What's your take?
Well, the thing is, first of all, I think the timing is a bit unfortunate for the government, especially as there is the major challenge to the whole ability of the granting of bail for murder, which is before the Privy Council, and that is yet to be decided. However, remember, our local courts have upheld the arguments which state that, look, basically, the granting of bail really ought to be a judicial function, and therefore there ought not to be this fetter imposed by Parliament, through the legislature. So it's really sad that the timing of it is coming up now when that is still to be decided. So I don't know why there was, no, I guess it couldn't be helped because, of course, the sunset clause is what would propel you to try to extend it, at this point. But it really created, I think, difficulty for some people, to say, well, look, hey, why are we doing this when we know that we are waiting on this major decision? There's also the question of, I don't know how, I guess Paul may better be able to tell us how the Attorney General explained his different position now as compared to 2019 when he would have been president of the Law Association, and I think he was quite vocal against it. I'm not sure what was the justification he gave for his changed position. Is it that he was merely doing his job as the legal advisor to the government, or is it that he genuinely had a conversion moment, like, Paul on the road to Damascus, where, he had this conversion moment and, he then became a believer of Christ, that kind of thing. I don't know how did he explain it?
That's a good point. That's a good point you're bringing up, Martin, because I forgot that Reginald Armour at that point, senior counsel, was in fact the president of the Law Association.
It came up in the debate, and when he piloted the bill, he said he knew it would come up, and so he dealt with it. He said while he was president of the Law Association, he had different responsibilities, and so upon becoming Attorney General, I'm paraphrasing here, he has to look at it through different eyes. I guess the cabinet, the government policy and the cabinet responsibility is obviously different to being president of the Law Association. So I don't know that he was preferring a personal view in either situation as opposed to a view of the collective in either situation.
Okay.
And to me that could be the explanation. People don't understand when you take on different roles,
right? Of
have
course,
different considerations.
That's why I was trying to.
So I don't think it's automatically hypocritical either.
It had nothing to do with personal conviction, one way or the other. On the
well, I don't know. I'm suggesting that may have been, but he said he has a different role now, so he has to look at it through a different lens. It's basically what the paraphrase of me. And to the person who called earlier and said they're disappointed in my vote, when the president appoints you, you vote how you want. And that's my answer all the time. When the president appoints you, you vote how you want.
Is it that someone felt that you you let down the team, so to speak, by voting against it?
Fortunately, I have no team to let down in the parliament.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to figure out
Well, they voiced an opinion when they cast their vote earlier on in the poll. So my response that is always, and Conrad Wendell gave me a wonderful bit of advice 7 years ago. He said, no matter how you vote, there are going to be people for and against you because there are people for and against any bill that comes to Parliament.
Right.
So I don't even justify. I don't aim to justify it.
Right. But, I think that, one of the bigger issues we need to look at in Trinidad and Tobago, and I have suggested this quite a few times, but of course, no one has really seen to fit to explore it further. I have said that what we need really and truly in Trinidad and Tobago is an independent bench in the lower house also. In other words, apart from your elected representatives for the government and the opposition, we ought to have in the lower house also an independent bench, a robustly independent bench made up of like civil society leaders, religious leaders, persons drawn from the labor unions or, and other interest groups who can probably sometimes bring about that balance that is needed in the lower house. Because you see, in the upper house, you do have that where the independent senators can actually exercise that sway that is needed sometimes between the two warring political factions.
Well, the bench is a moderating bench.
Well, and that's what I say.
But I think the system likes the dogfight, and I'm using the word figuratively. They like the dogfight in the lower house because it's really about the elected members of parliament.
Right. And that's why I think, of course, this would be part of the bigger picture of constitutional reform. But I think if it is that we do it in such a way to have an independent bench also in the lower house, I think that might bring about a lot more maturity and stability in terms of the passage of legislation.
But constitutional reform, as you brought it up, Martin, isn't that kind of like in the way distant horizon? Because it doesn't seem like either party is really seriously interested. But at least the two main parties we have now, let me say that in the context of third parties mushrooming by the second. The two parties we have now, obviously, by their actions, have indicated they're not interested.
Yes, and the thing is, I think the only time you would hear them speaking about it is when they're in opposition. But once they're in government, they have no interest whatsoever.
Going back to the bill, Martin, because one of the points of contention, well, not points of contention, one of the points raised, and the suggestion by some that without the law, there is no check and balance, and even Richard agreed this morning, there is the judicial officer who can and make a determination on whether someone should or should not get bail.
Yeah, and I
mean, not that because somebody applies to bail, they have to get bail.
Yeah, that's why I started off with that point about the Privy Council, because it really seems that you do have that ability to make that determination there as opposed to the mandatory. What I was looking for, I don't know, again, Paul, you might have to help me. I was looking to see if the government in its presentation, or maybe the Attorney General who piloted the bill, if they were actually able to show, for instance, to say, well, look, of course, they don't have to use persons' actual names, but say, for instance, if they say, well, look, John Brown was a serial rapist, and
the Minister of National Security, Minister Hines, joined the debate yesterday, and he was furnished with information by the Attorney General about how many persons in the last 3 years came as repeat offenders and were not denied bail. So that sort of cursory data was provided.
Right, I saw that, but I was hoping maybe for a little more deviling into the details, because I think that would have been a little more convincing to try to persuade persons to say, well, hey, listen, yes, as I say, without using the people's actual names, to say, well, look, this person came before, this magistrate on such and such date. He had 5 previous convictions for possession of firearms, and based upon this bill, he was denied bail automatically for the 120 days, that kind of thing. I think that would have probably brought it home a bit more rather than just the lumped gross numbers to say, well, look, 10 people or 15 or 100, I think the figure I saw was 100 and something persons who were denied bail. You know, it would have helped, I think, in terms of personalizing it so that we could see, well, hey, look, yes, it really worked for that purpose. You know, that I felt would have helped their argument.
But the Attorney General has also indicated that he plans to bring a suite of bail reform legislation in the not too distant future.
Oh.
So there's nothing stopping him / the government from including what didn't pass yesterday in some altered form,
right,
in addition to other measures, because one of the to me, the measures that are presently available is the issue of electronic monitoring as a conditionality for bail, which is already in the books, and then only 38 persons have been fitted with those since it has become law.
Right.
So if someone you think is a danger and they've applied for bail as a judicial officer, you can say, well, you'll get bail on the condition that you wear this bracelet.
Right. And then notice that, Paul, one of the things that I was concerned about is that the bill also speaks to after the 120 days, if no evidence is presented, then of course you are eligible to apply for bail. And you look at how our judicial system functions in terms of the slowness. I mean, how many matters? I think that would have been interesting if they were able to show, well, look, we had 100 matters where evidence was presented within 120 days, because I could tell you, Paul, being part of the legal system, in most of these criminal matters, most of those prosecutions, they are never ready within 120 days. Never, ever ready.
And you're very right, Martin. You're very right. And so I just looked at it when that clause, when it first came out a few years ago, when the initial bill, and they said 120 days, and the timelines for presenting evidence, etc. I said, basically, you're just saying you're in for 3 months or 4 months, and then you could apply for bail. That's basically what you're saying.
And I think that has been the effect, Paul.
Yes.
That has been the effect of it, because I mean, don't even talk about, I mean, things like the PRCO 1, PRCO 2, PRCO 3, PRCO 4 cases. I mean, those are glaring national examples. But on a micro scale, that same kind of thing occurs every day in the courts, because they are and the thing is, I'll tell you this, unfortunately, the police prosecutors, the DPP prosecutors, I have seen some of them come to court almost with an expectation that they will automatically be granted an adjournment, and they all give the same thing. Oh, they're understaffed and overworked and they don't have the resources, and they just parrot that. In fact, recently, when questioned in this same PRCO 1 case, the DPP again reiterated the fact that he's functioning with less than 50% of his staff, and that he's underfunded and stuff like that. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is that even if the bill were passed, from a practical point, as Richard said, basically all it does is deny you for 3 months and then you're free to apply. Because I'm sure 99.9% of the cases, they are never presenting any evidence within 120 days.
Yeah. Which is the equivalent of basically 4 months. Yeah, because that's the system. The system as it is now, you're not going to get your matter heard within that 4 months and be resolved.
Yeah.
So you're basically inside for 4 months.
Mm-hmm. And then you see another thing, like for instance, I could tell you the magistrates' courts, most of them, each magistrate on a morning that they sit would have like about 40 something, 50 something. Some of them have even more than that matters on their list for the day. There's no way you can even begin to think of saying, well, you're going to do that number of trials in a day. So why are the lists so long? Because all the magistrate ends up doing, basically, like, then you go through that list. You hear from attorneys, you hear from police prosecutor, you hear from maybe sometimes you may have customs officers who are there as witnesses or whatever. By the time you go through that list, you hear from the accused persons who might be unrepresented. Your whole day is gone, just simply adjourning matters. So in other words, what time is left for you to actually start a trial of a matter? So I think we need to look at that also. So maybe we need to have maybe either junior magistrates or maybe more magistrates who will deal with adjournments, and then like you have trial court magistrates alone who you fix one matter for them for the day. So therefore the attorneys know, the DPP's office know, the police know, hey, listen, you have to be ready because that's the only thing on for that day. So therefore, don't come and ask for any excuse or any explanation as to why you're not ready, because the matter is going to be dealt with. I think that would help to expedite things in the system, and then have another magistrate doing the adjournments.
One of the things
I hear you, Martin, but I don't know, you know.
One of the things that brought to Richard's attention.
Sorry, Paul. Right. You have magistrates who right now say we are doing the trial X date, and people will come on that date and say, I need an adjournment.
Right, I know, but what I'm saying is, if that is the only matter fixed, then I think persons will understand that there is a greater level of seriousness, because I think what they rely on is the fact that the magistrates list is so overwhelming that it's much easier for the magistrate to say, all right, okay, look, you're not ready. I have plenty other matters to deal with. Take your adjournment.
But if they know the magistrate is already...
If the magistrate read all the papers, read all the documents, the JSO has everything in order, they're ready to proceed, I think it's harder for you to succeed with an adjournment if that's the only matter on the list for the day.
There is a Canadian Supreme Court ruling that I cited to Richard and the guys yesterday because of a case that was taking inordinately long in Canada. Again, the same delay of justice issue came about, where in some specific types of cases or matters, there's now an 18-month and a 30-month, and this is the Canadian Supreme Court ruled on this, delay option, and the matters have to start with an 18 for provincial and 30 for another type of matter in Canada. I mean, it was a close call with the Canadian Supreme Court, with 4 justices saying the Parliament should not be imposing a specific time on the reasonableness of matters coming to court. But I mean, they thought it was the way to deal with their delayed system of justice, which is justice denied in most people's principles. Look.
Yes.
So I don't know what would happen in Trinidad and Tobago with that, or what the eventual cause. Of course, that will go to the Privy Council in Trinidad and Tobago eventually. If it came up from that, even if the High Court in Trinidad and Tobago and the Appeal Court said yes, we're going down that road, which is unlikely because the Chief Justice, I don't think can go down that road and hold the judiciary to an 18-month or 30-month or even more, a 5 year, no more than 5 years for a case. Because what people don't realize is that, and it is how you are both attorneys at law. The justice system is built on somebody being presumed innocent until proved adjudicated guilty by a court of law. And being charged is a serious thing. But being charged and waiting 12, 15, 18 years while your life is in abeyance for your matter to come to trial is an atrocity.
It is.
And when you have more than 70 or 80% of the persons in our prisons remanded, which means they are awaiting trial, it adds to the atrocity. And unless it's you in there, because let's just say the 3,400 persons, let's just say, for instance, 90% of them are guilty for argument's sake. And I'm not saying they are, I'm saying for argument's sake. That leaves 300 innocent people waiting 10 years for trial where they left on hold.
Yes.
I don't think people could process that, you know.
But Paul,
what that means for somebody's life.
But Paul, it gets worse.
And in the state of remand.
But Paul, it gets worse when you're charged for murder. Because for murder, you're inside. For other criminal offenses, you might be on bail. And it's still a burden. It's still a mental burden for you because you have to be going to court, etc., while this matter, it hangs. It's a mental stress on you. But for murder, you're inside.
And I understand
which is why the issue of bail for murder, came up, and it's now.
And I understand. I fully understand the public's almost visceral reaction and saying, "Well, you know what? They charge, leave them in there." because of the oppressive nature of crime. So you feel once somebody's been charged, meaning you get him off the street. Because we feel so affected by crime. Crime is the number one issue in this country, and I understand the public reaction. I don't care. Once the police charge you, you're guilty, is generally the mindset.
Right,
You understand?
right, yes, yes.
But imagine, let's take it down from the 300. If there are 10 people in there who have been wrongly charged and are innocent, and in there for 10 years, and that is your life, almost the end of your life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is not justice.
Yeah.
It's not justice.
And it's something that could never be fair and never justified in civil society. And
if the system were moving as it should in an expeditious, a reasonably expeditious manner, that you're charged and within even 3 years, and I find that long, your matter comes up and you are either deemed innocent or guilty, it is still understandable that you can take a little more onerous steps to protect, you understand? Legislatively. But given this system, and we've all just seemingly thrown our hands in the air, acceptable, that's just the way it is. You wait 12 years for a trial. You know it's 12 years?
Yeah.
You know it's 12 hours inside that place? I spent half an hour and I get sick. Physically sick.
Yeah.
You know it's 2 weeks in there?
Yeah.
But people have they don't look at the whole picture sometimes.
Yeah,
and
you
I'm
see,
not saying I
Paul,
don't
can
understand.
The emotion of the man in the street, in the sense that, I think because of the scourge of crime, people tend to give the emotive knee-jerk response to say, yeah, well, look here, just put them away forever, that kind of thing. But yeah, when you bring it down to the individual level and the personal level of someone who really may be innocent, and, having to face this type of situation, then it changes the dynamic. It really does. And if it were a family member of one,
until it's you or your family member,
yes, then their point of view might change.
Then you learn the system and learn how unfair the system can be.
Right. Yes.
So not only, as you said, I fully understand the public response. I fully understand well, you know what? I don't care. You find yourself in trouble with the police, you end up on a charge, take that. It comes with the territory. But that's not what the system is designed. That's not how the system is designed to operate.
No, and then, Paul, as you mentioned, the police, then you also have, the flip side to this whole thing is scenarios where police have shown themselves in the past, police officers in Trinidad and Tobago, some of them have shown themselves to not be trustworthy at all in the charges they lay, in the fact that some of them have been accused and, proven to have been planting evidence, to, be charging people wrongfully out of malice or spite.
Malice and vindictiveness.
Corruption, vindictiveness, whatever, so therefore there's that lack of trust on that side.
And that is real.
Yeah, and that is real. Look at the report we saw from the PCA, recently, where they said basically they've concluded that these police officers concocted a story and lied it to the commissioner of police. So if they
when one of their colleagues was shot by them.
That's the whole thing. This is the point. So it's a multi-headed hydra.
But on the other side of that, Martin, I also understand in some instances, and I get the both sides of the argument, where the police do their work and somebody is charged and the evidence is brought and somebody who has previous serious offenses is given bail. So I understand both sides of it. So it's really a balancing act in terms of considerations.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, what are your thoughts? I know we've kind of exhausted that issue of the bail bill now, and I'm waiting to see what the Attorney General brings in terms of a suite of legislation to reform the bail system in Trinidad and Tobago.
Which may still need a majority, yeah?
Which will still need
a special majority.
Yeah.
But
well, as I always say, it doesn't stop the government / the Attorney General from bringing legislation that has to be considered upon its merits and its impact on society. Because that is the eventual aim of it, for the positive impact of society.
Just a point, Paul, because before you go on, the issue of the Senate not passing it almost seems as if they got the 19 votes that they required in the Senate. that the bill was a fait accompli, but they still had to go through the House.
Yeah.
And you didn't have the votes in the House anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, what?
Well, sometimes, and this is just my impression, although you know, as a government, you will not meet muster in the House, a message is sent by getting the support of the Senate.
Right. And
because that is supposed to be the
was
balancing, the moderating house of debate and the higher intellectual debate. So if you send a message, well, the Senate vote for it, but the House, you can cast blame on the other side.
I thought that was the strategy. That's how I saw it.
And that's why sometimes you bring bills to the Senate before you take them to the House. And sometimes, who knows, maybe because the Senate voted for it, the members of the opposition in the House maybe convinced that, well, it has gone through the changes needed in the Senate if they take amendments, and it's more palatable to you in the House in that instance.
Yeah, I thought it was for that effect, the pressure and the moral suasion, if it were to pass in the Senate.
Until you sit there, you don't know about the vicissitudes. There's all kind of dramas and actors and theatrical performance and writings that you have to wade through.
So in other words, the words of Calypsonian explainer are still correct.
What are your thoughts on the Beetham situation and the protests that erupted in the context of now the PCA's release of their report before the police investigation is complete into the shooting in Diego Martin, and then the Beetham situation? Let's start with the PCA report first, please.
Well, I mean, I think that definitely the PCA report appears to be, very damning in its conclusions. Once there was due process in terms of the investigation, then I think that definitely we need to hear from the DPP in terms of what he intends to do. But separate and apart from that, I have said that the Commissioner of Police ought to take action, because there are provisions even within the Police Service Act where he can take internal disciplinary measures, and this is separate and apart from the Professional Standards Bureau, because I saw he referred to the Professional Standards Bureau and he said, well, they are investigating the matter also, etc. But separate and apart from that, as commissioner, you have powers even to dismiss an officer from the service. So I find that, you need to also look at that as commissioner, look at the powers you have and take a firm line. If it is that you are also of the view that officers may have lied to you and misled you, then I think you ought to send a very strong signal to show that, look, hey, you are not tolerating this, you are not accepting this, because at the end of the day, if it is that officers show that level of disrespect for you as head of the police service, then unless you take some firm, decisive action, they will feel, well, hey, the GT, they get through. So therefore, others may feel, well, hey, I could do the same thing. So that was one aspect that jumped out at me in terms of that. In terms of the DPP's decision, of course, well, we wait to hear what he has to say based upon his view of the evidence. And of course, the DPP is not necessarily bound by the findings of the PCA. He will make his own independent determination and decision as to whether he sees.
But how much weight do you think at this point? Because the PCA has been speaking about many of these issues they're investigating and have investigated. And the PCA is a constitutional body which has the power to investigate credibly, I would presume, police misconduct. And to have a report that states that we have incontrovertible evidence that the officer Jilks, who was killed, died from a bullet fired by a police weapon, maybe unintentionally, you understand?
Yeah.
Contrary to the narrative of officers who were on duty, who pursued an individual for days, accused him of doing it, besmirched his character and reputation, and misled your acting commissioner. That is very serious.
Yes.
Not only is it serious, Paul, it's also further evidence that justifies why legislation like that bail bill should not be allowed to pass. Not when the main functionaries of that bill, the arresting officers, can be so polluted, and you're seeing evidence of it.
Yeah, and that was the point I was making when I referred to the police in terms of their role in this whole scenario, because you see, there's that lack of trust by the public because the history of some of the officers in the police service has rarely shown that, there is a disconnect in terms of that trust and faith that you should have. We all remember, the stories we heard years ago where, it was alleged that the head of the anti-kidnapping squad was one of the biggest kidnappers, so to speak, there are things that jar your consciousness as a member of the public, and it shakes the foundations of your faith in the police service.
Which is sad because we need to support and trust the police service. Because they are working for us in terms of they are out there to protect and save us.
Well, they have to earn that trust.
I agree. I fully agree.
They have to earn that. And at points they do, but at points it falls back and it pulls back the whole image. And when officers misbehave and lie or do things that are unconstitutional and do all manner of things, even to the point of it seems lying to your commanding officer, how is the rest of the society supposed to adjudicate upon that?
But one of the things people need to understand, you're using the word misbehave, Martin used the word disconnect. But people have to understand the situation with Officer Jilks, who died, according to the PCA report, from a bullet out of a police gun, comes just 3 years with an open wound with 3 men dying in Mover.
Yes. Yes.
Giving a misinformation about what happened there.
Yes.
Misinformation only corrected because CCTV cameras and people's phones provided a different narrative to what happened there. And a litany of other events like that.
Yep.
In high profile, high stakes cases.
Bernadette James. Remember WPC Bernadette James?
Yep.
Yeah. Then remember Corporal Salvery.
So when you have to understand the public's, because this is death here, you can't come back from death, You can't come back and argue, well, I was right and my hand was up in the air. Your heart stopped beating and your breathing stopped. So someone has lost their life, their brother, their father, their uncle. And now, in confrontational situations with the police, and it takes forever to get answers and resolution.
Yep.
Another problem with it, because it takes so long. Look, the PCA report done. We still waiting for the PSB report, which could take months again. Alexa, activating Siri. Yeah, so people need to understand. You have to understand the mistrust of the public with the police and the general public at that.
Yeah, and it's very real. It's very real, and unfortunately, we have so many examples to show why persons don't feel that level. Look, even the situation with what happened on Independence Square with the killing of those 3 young men. From the initial report that I saw, that they said, the police said they heard an explosion and they thought that they had come under attack. I just found that sounded such strange language to be using, because as a police officer, basically, you must know if someone is firing at you. Either your vehicle is hit or, you would see the flash of the muzzle from, the shot, that kind of thing. You would see the firearm being pointed from the vehicle in front of you, pointed in your direction, that kind of thing. You heard nothing of that. All you saw was them saying they heard an explosion and they thought that they were coming under attack. So therefore they fired. It really brings the question, and I mean,
But let's take it one step further. Let's take it one step further. Men being questioned, interrogated, while in police custody, died a couple of years ago.
Yep.
Yes.
Died.
By falling off a chair.
The autopsy report indicated blunt force trauma to head and thoracic cavity. While as heinous as the crime they're accused of committing, because the Andrew Barr case was extremely emotive for obvious reasons.
Yes, it was.
And people don't understand how dangerous it is for people being interrogated in police custody to die under those circumstances. Because it could be your family.
Of course. But look at the situation with Jaylan Walker in the US. I mean, okay, initially it was supposed to be a traffic violation, and of course the police tried to stop him, and he fled. He drove off, and then eventually ran on foot, etc., etc. And now this man was shot 60 times by the police. You juxtapose that against the Chicago shooter on Independence Day, July 4th, right? A young white male who, with an assault rifle, and the police knew that he was armed with an assault rifle, he killed 7 people and wounded 30. And he, in his police chase, he was arrested without incident. You ask yourself, so again, I mean, of course, this is international, but the only reason why I'm mentioning it is to show that it's not just in Trinidad. We have issues with questions as to the credibility of the actions of police officers. Because you ask yourself, how could it be that someone who has an AR-15, an assault rifle, who just killed 7 people and wounded 30, and yet still you're able to arrest him without incident? But this unarmed man running away from you, you feel threatened, so you shoot him 60 times. You see, when police officers do these things, it does erode the public's trust.
Well, Martin, more than that, yes, I fully agree with that, but the other part of it is that there would be a restoration of public trust if, as you said, the police leadership took definitive action, expedited these investigations, and within 4 or 5 weeks, either exonerate the officer for the allegations of wrongdoing or fire them. Or in some cases, charge them with misconduct.
Right.
If that happened in an expeditious manner, the impact on public confidence and trust would be reduced. But that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and that's the point I'm making, and that's why I was kind of disappointed that I didn't hear more from the commissioner about his actions, rather than simply saying, well, he's waiting on the DPP to decide what he wants to do, or the Professional Standards Bureau is investigating. There are powers that he has.
There's always a reluctance because they say, well, they will take us to court, and you
can't let that fear cripple you or stifle you from doing what you ought to do. In other words, the courts will always be there, and persons can always file actions. I always tell people that, I say, there's nothing to stop you. The doors of the courts are open to all. The intelligent, the wise, the stupid, the illiterate, everybody is welcome at the doors of the court. So you could never stop people filing actions. But the thing is, that ought not to prevent you or cripple or stifle you from doing what you ought to do in terms of your job and your duty and your responsibility.
And when you I mean, how many officers are on suspension now regarding that case with Officer Jokes?
I know that initially 3 had been put on suspension. I don't know how many more may have been, if anything further from the PCA's report.
And what of the family of Officer Jokes now? Is it that the police are going to seek to support them? Is he eligible for this? I didn't
the $1 million.
I don't know. I mean, if it's one case, I see that should be guaranteed that family get that kind of money. Is that?
Well, we would hope so.
He died in the line of duty from a bullet from a police gun.
Yes, yes, we would hope so.
I
But
mean,
I know of quite a few other matters. There was an officer who died while training for Independence Day parade. The horse reared up and threw him, and he broke his neck. He died. Up to now, his family have not received anything. So I mean, we would hope that it's done, but Paul, sometimes it looks like the wheels of justice grind very slowly, even within the police.
And that is absolutely ridiculous. Because in all fairness to police officers, they put their lives on the line every single day when they go out there to deal with the criminal element. And if, God forbid, they lose their lives and there is a policy in place that you get $1 million, that should be fast-tracked.
but we don't even know if it still exists, the policy still exists. We don't even know.
I agree with you.
It should be fast-tracked. People shouldn't have to beg for it.
Yeah.
It is dehumanizing for families to have to beg.
Yeah, but I think if we ought to check the records to see how many families of police officers who died in the line of duty have ever gotten that $1 million. That I think would be interesting, Paul. First to get that information.
It should be available. It's state money.
Yeah, but the thing is, you know that part of our challenge in Trinidad and Tobago is, data insufficiency. We really lack proper records. And I remember when I was a commissioner on the Police Service Commission, that was part of the challenge we faced in that, in terms of independently sourcing information. Our caseworkers who would have to go out to gather information, most times they had to end up going back to the police to gather information on the police for us to be able to do our job of assessing the police. And I mean, think of how absurd that is. And this is because there were no independent sources of that data anywhere. So I mean, you basically have to go to the police records for them to tell you, okay, how they would have spent their monies, what they did, etc. So basically, whatever they tell you, you just basically have to accept because you have no other independent way of determining or ascertaining that. And that's part of our challenge here in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the availability of data in that sense. I mean, our Central Statistical Office, I don't know if it is that they are also underfunded and under-resourced, but I know in many cases when you are looking for information and you go to them, they either don't have it or it's totally outdated. It's like from 10, 15 years back, which usually is of no use because you really need real-time data in most cases such as that.
Yeah. Well, no time has crept up on us, Martin George.
Okay, yeah. Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure, as always. And, a good morning to you guys and to Trinidad and Tobago. Let's make it a productive day. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Martin. All the best to you. Have a great day. Be safe.
Thanks.
Appreciate you being on the program. All right. All right, as we wait
Can I remember the press recorder, Steve, but I know the newsroom record.
For our 8 o'clock news brief,